Gentlemen.
All right, then.
The man didn't tell me about blue
You get
attire.
your memo?
I clearly did not get the memo about
Mark,
blue. So
Mark and Bluetooth.
yes,
Last week he was in green. This
But
week he in blue.
I went in green because of the theme last
Me
week. in
too.
case
Me
were
too.
wondering.
You. Old man taking a
So-
light.
Anyhow,
all right then. All right, when they get me. All right, but I am my royal colors though. We got royalty in the house later, so I ain't royal. I all right with this.
easy.
I'm an individual.
Royal
I'm
wine.
different. Close enough. Hey, Mandy. Hey, everybody. How we doing? Welcome to another edition of The Living Room. It's a special edition in the living room today because today is a living legend in the living room, and we'll get to that in a second. I'm your host, Andre, our co-host, Andre, with my good friends, Philip and Mark. If this is your first time, you're here on We Global. Hit like, hit follow if you're on YouTube, ring the bell. Follow us on Instagram or on Twitter as well. And as I said, this is We Global, where we come together here every Sunday evening, afternoon, morning, depending on where you are, and just have good Caribbean conversation. And we'll tell you more as we go on. But let's get straight to it. How are we doing, guys?
We doing good, man. Just listening to you. Listening carefully.
Carefully. Oh, you're talking claiming? No, that was slip of the tongue.
Aye.
Slip of the tongue. Hey,
off,
Jennifer. Yeah, of course. Y'all know I do this all the time, so I that was a mere slip today. But be all right.
Listen.
I want to do it, man. How things up north of the river?
North or north?
Well, both of y'all north of me, so north of the M25 is north.
I mean, as
Yeah, that's
you're
London.
talking about North, how things in North London?
Oh, see,
Oh,
this is why you don't got friends, you know. This is where you don't got friends. All right, so Arsenal win a little
wait.
game today, a little
You
fluky
said
game.
North. I just asked a question.
But look, congratulations, man. Congratulations.
Thanks.
But we know what's gonna happen to Arsenal come Christmas, as always does. So that's all right. That's all right. But congrats. Hello, I'm Blackman. How we doing? And everybody else who's in there. Chesterfield, how we doing? But congrats to them, man. I didn't listen to it, but decent game from what I heard.
Of course not.
You know, no, I can't tell you last day I watched a good game of football. I
feel?
just
How you
watched
feel?
the results, you know. You know,
Yeah,
but
you feel?
anyway, congrats, man. Enjoy
I take it.
yourself. Enjoy
Listen,
yourself.
I've moved on.
Yeah,
I've taken
enjoy.
the congratulations. Thank you, man.
But
all
just
is
so
well.
people know, he's very petty, you know. He send me when he score goals, he send me voice notes and stuff for his household celebrating. I mean, what's that? Seriously, what's that?
Petty. He's very petty.
Sitting down having my evening lunch and they getting voice. What? Household keeping beer noise. All right. I'm Montserrat. How you doing, man? All right, but I give you that. Hey, Valerie, how you
Thank
doing?
you, man. Thank you.
Congrats. But anyway, how was the week, man? What's going on?
The week was okay.
I agree, Chesterfield.
What was that he saying?
He's a Spurs
Yeah,
need a manager.
okay.
Need a manager.
I think he can
The
be
week was
first
good.
to go. First to go. How things, man?
The week was interesting. You know, we having a few issues here in the UK right now. I don't know if you get caught in any of the petrol gate. They're looking for fuel. Can't
Look, I
find
went
the
out
fuel,
today
man.
to find some, and every gas station I went to was
out.
no fuel.
Yeah.
So I just had to say, you know what? All right, I can just stay at home for the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
I ain't going away. I
It's
good.
funny because Friday night I was driving past petrol stations, ram off, as we would say, right? And I was driving, shaking my head, saying, "What's wrong with these people?"
These people, yeah.
Until Saturday
You look at your bar.
afternoon, yeah, I
You
needed
look at your
petrol.
gauge.
Yeah, and I ended up going to 3 different gas stations. One I got in, and it was in a queue. I say, "I can't do this," so I thought, I know one that nobody.
Oh,
goes
you can't do that, buddy. You don't do that. You can't do that.
I left that queue, went to this one that nobody goes to. There was a queue.
Of course.
But then the guy had no unleaded. He only had diesel. Right? And then I just thought to go to like the supermarket gas station, which I've never done before.
Wow.
Right.
And just go there. And what I liked about them, I'm not going to call the supermarket.
Don't call them. No
no.
plugs.
No free advertising. But
Yeah,
what I
exactly.
liked about them is they actually had people out dealing with the chaos.
I think I went
okay.
to that same one down by me as well.
Directing people towards,
Yeah.
okay, go here.
Oh, that's a smart way of
It
doing it.
was good. Because
Yeah.
I got
Yeah, yeah,
people
yeah.
in, people didn't seem too upset and bothered. But today when I passed back, it was locked off. Everything went.
Well, as
That,
the main transport man here, Corbin,
yes.
explain to folks what's going on in the UK
Man,
regarding fuel.
he is
Well,
the
well,
transport
here
man.
I am the transport man, not the main
Sorry.
one. Get your
Yeah,
language
man.
right, man. Let me tell you when to know nothing about transport. Come on.
I
Exactly.
used drive and I used catch bus and train. I used a transport man too.
Look,
know, the bicycle.
for our audience, the big issue in the UK here at the moment is we have a shortage of HGV drivers.
Truck
And that
drivers.
is- truck drivers. Yeah, lorry drivers.
Lorry.
And that is translating into everything from supermarket deliveries to delivery of fuel to forecourts, you name it. It is just permeating everywhere. So the latest hit is forecourts. It is not that we don't have enough fuel in the country. We just don't have enough drivers to get the fuel to the forecourts. So that's going to rumble on for some time, and it's looking quite precarious, especially in these months running up to Christmas.
Yeah, and it's really a perfect storm of COVID, lockdowns, Brexit,
Yep.
and what's not that's happened here. So what's happened with the drivers is that a lot of drivers that were perhaps from the Eastern Europe, with all the lockdowns, they're going back home because of some of the issues. Some of them can't come back, or some of them deciding that they can't come back because of whatever restrictions of Brexit, and some of them deciding to stay home. So what has happened is that now we don't have drivers to drive the trucks. So it means that all the logistics that would normally happen on the roads just can't happen. So the oil companies or the petrol companies can't get the petrol to the gas stations. The food companies, Sainsbury, Asda, all these guys can't get their foods from all the different places they need to get them from. So some supermarket shelves empty. Again, it's not because there's a shortage of food. It's actually because there's nobody to transport the food.
So, the funny
So
thing
that's
is
a
on
big issue.
On news last week, they were saying we'll be issuing hundreds of visas.
Yeah.
Well, today,
Yeah.
we'll be issuing thousands of visas.
But the funny thing about that is that they're only looking for people up to Christmas Eve. So
Exactly.
come Christmas, you can clear off. We don't need you here anymore.
So it's
You got
seasonal
to
work
hold
like
your
picking fruit now. Exactly. And the other thing that is knock on there is now, what was the salary now to be a truck driver?
Man.
What it
Man,
moved
listen,
from?
You can get up to about 60,000 a year now driving a truck here in the UK.
And what was before this crisis?
Oh well, you're probably half that. You can probably
Half,
drop to about
exactly.
half that, yeah. But not only that, you can get 30 pounds an hour picking cabbages. So
Exactly.
there's a shortage
Enough
there too.
coleslaw. Enough
Yeah,
coleslaw.
Exactly, because one of the things that's happened there with Brexit as well is that there were a number of people that would come over from Eastern Europe to do some of those jobs. But obviously now, again, perfect storm of Brexit and lockdowns due to COVID and what's not. Now there's no one there. So now they're just paying people to come and pick all this stuff before it spoils. And they're paying people to drive. But of course, you need the necessary license in order to do the truck driving.
But the other problem is that, there isn't just that there wasn't enough, it's people were taking too much. Like I saw a guy with a little small car in front of me.
You're right, Michael.
But then on the back seat, he had two big drums.
You know what I'm saying?
So he could fill up his tank and then fill
And
up
then
these
two
two
drums.
extra tanks as
People
well.
just being
That's
greedy, man.
craziness. That is absolute craziness.
But that's
I think
happening all over.
some gas stations actually put in a limit on the amount that you
ration.
can pump in, and they won't go as well. So you might get 30 pounds or something like that.
Then they told my son, him, wait for an hour or so, because we were watching the gas price as we drove along. We saw the gas prices were starting to
Oh
creep up.
yes, going
yeah.
up
And
now
the next
too.
thing that's going to happen is that they'll start to put rations on where you can't go over a
Absolutely.
certain amount.
So
Yeah.
that's the big thing this week and for the next couple of weeks too, I suspect.
Well, I think it can go on for quite a bit, to be honest with you. So that's going to have a knock-on effect. But weren't you saying too, Mark, that what's happening there? Some people leaving some driving professions, like bus drivers and stuff now.
Yeah,
So that's
so
another
every-
knock-on effect.
Yeah, you've got this
Wow.
knock-on effect. So, if you're the bus driver with a class 1 license, you might suddenly get off a whole heap of money to go and drive logistics and deliver food to supermarkets or dangerous chemicals. So you shift out of bus, that means, okay, so we haven't really got enough bus drivers. So you've got this knock-on effect that it potentially could start crippling us even more during winter. So we've got, as you said, a perfect storm. brewing
Perfect storm.
As we go
Perfect
into
storm, I
winter,
think.
with COVID still raging, of course.
Well, yeah, of course. And of course, we've seen in the Caribbean
Oh, man.
having its own perfect storm regarding the way how COVID is going on
Oh,
and
man.
how it's rampaging across the region, you know?
Oh man, and I'm
That
sure
is pretty
I'm
scary
sure
to see right across
it
the region
is.
at the moment.
It is frightening. You know, as you sit here and look on, you just think, "Wow, this is crazy." What's that?
Somebody want to know how you just got through in the house, how you're adjusting.
Paving the way.
Girl, I slept in his bed last night, so that'll tell you.
No, you gotta explain that now.
Well,
Meaning
look,
you sleep by yourself, you get.
Don't
Big
talk
man
about
gotta explain that now, Phil.
Let's let him
You
man.
get-
Don't make no assumptions. Let him man.
Oh,
speak it up.
sorry.
Phil, man, you see why I glad you be here on the Sunday? Calm down, man. Calm down.
I
calm
just
down.
asking questions. I just you give me half the story and then like you was going on.
I know we
So,
got some new audience into there who is here as we honor Rogers, but you know we'll get to that in a second. But yes, my son went off to university a couple of weeks ago, and I've been going through that adjustment period, that adjustment phase. You know, as Karen said, what is it like being a family of three? It's tough. You know, I was still working from home, and some days I was like, oh, there's nobody here. Kyle is not even upstairs; he's gone. But yeah, I had a little lapse yesterday, man. I just went and I fell asleep in his room, and it was like, you know. I think it's one of them psychological things, actually.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Boy,
All
listen,
right.
boy, listen. Your turn will come. That's all
I
I'm
have no
saying.
doubt. I have no doubt. You know, but thanks for the clarification. I was really just asking as a friend because you didn't tell me all of this
I
week,
know.
you know.
Yeah, we didn't know. We didn't know what we said. Sleeping and the pillow
Yeah,
and all
Last
that
night.
sort of thing.
It was only last night.
Phil, the man didn't tell me nothing so. You know.
Yeah, but he was just man. We dropped the lad off. He was good. We come back home.
Yeah. He was all, you know, he's all puffed. Yeah, he was all good, you know. He's doing well. He's handling his
problem.
business, you know.
Yeah.
I'm great. I'm good.
Teaching him to cook a bit.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff, you know. He was, but I see some other stuff happening in the region because when I look at Barbados had like a dual week. On the one hand, full of scandal, I was like, huh? And then on the other hand as well, you had a moment that you could be proud of when Prime Minister Motley spoke at the UN General Assembly.
Tremendous speech.
So it was actually, if you want to call it, a week of two halves in Barbados.
Yes, absolutely.
To be honest with you.
And we got to see how that scandal is going to play out of the vaccine scam, you know. So let's wait. Or apparently, it's not a scam. I don't know. I might be using the wrong terminology. So
Careful.
don't come after us. I've retracted it.
Man, I'm with some kind of scam, man.
Scam. Yeah, that's a good one, actually. It was scam-ish.
Scam-ish.
Not quite a scam, but scam-ish.
But it was quite bad. I think
yeah.
it's quite bad, to be honest with you.
yeah.
The whole thing of contracting with that person, and then when you read the whole thing, he was buying from someone else, who was getting from someone else, who was getting from someone else, who some person from Trinidad was in the mix, who some lawyer from America, and you're like, huh?
Diligent.
I smell something fishy.
Something there, man. Something fishy there, man.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll see. But
the
then
flip side was Motley's speech at the UN was tremendous.
I tell you
was-
what, I watched that book 2 or 3 times, man. We even made our daughters sit down and watch it. Actually,
Oh, wow.
We made them sit down and we said, "Watch this," because obviously when you're here in the UK, but the news ain't telling you that Motley speaking the way you see that nonsense that Boris get up there and talk the
Talking
other
about
day.
Kermit the Frog. I was so embarrassed,
I'm like,
man.
what foolishness he talking? And he get prime time and the place full. But when you get a speech like Prime Minister Motley, you're there like place empty,
There's
as she
nobody
rightfully
anymore.
called them out on.
Absolutely.
You know, how long we got to come here and talk and the place empty?
Nobody is listening.
I thought that was boss. Seriously.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of bravery you want to see, because I listened to some of the speeches from some of the other Caribbean guys as well, and you're like, y'all listen to this here though, because what you know saying afterwards is
It tie you up.
almost, it don't tell you up and it don't make no sense now. But
that's-
anyhow,
And that's part of the problem. But I'm sure we're going to come back to that in much bigger conversations in terms of the region. So,
we are gonna come back to
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
So look, guys in the audience, who this might be your first time, as I said before at the top, you're on We Global, West Indians Global. And what we do is that we love to have Caribbean conversations, because in our view, it's for us to have our own conversations, not for other people extra regionally to tell our stories. So we believe that we should be telling our own stories in the way how we tell them. Sometimes that's with a little bit of laughter. Sometimes you get very, very serious. And even when you're dealing with serious topics, you do a bit of both. And where do we do a lot of talking, dealing with lots of issues around the world and righting the world's wrong? in our living room. And that's where you are. So welcome to our living room this afternoon. But we also decided that we wanted to do, what we also decided that we wanted to do was to honor our legends, our living legends. People who we know has elevated the Caribbean through their work. They just emanate and ooze Caribbean togetherness in everything that they do. And again, it's part of that whole thinking of we need to be the one telling our own stories. For example, we have Michael Holden in, but very often a lot of what you hear about Michael Holden, you go to BBC to hear about. You hear Cricket Info from India, or you see the Australian news talking cricket and they're talking about Michael Holden. And tell you what, they're telling us about us through their lens. Yep. Why? We're the ones to tell our own stories. And that's why we started what we're doing now. And today we are extremely honored to have the Caribbean legend that is Julian Rogers to join us in our Legends in the Living Room series. And I think it's amazing to have him in, guys. What do you guys think?
What a guy. You know, what a guy. What an awesome inspiration. What a Caribbean man, and what a person to follow in his footsteps when you're talking about being regional, thinking about Caribbean first. This is the person. This is the person on whose shoulders we got to stand up.
100% agreed.
Definitely a recognizable voice.
Oh, man. I wonder if he would sing something for me.
He can sing. I never. He's a karaoke man.
That's a good question.
I don't know. You know, I nearly shaved to get the trademark goatee today, but I thought that was a bit much. That was a bit. That was a bit much. But look, we're gonna bring in Julian in a second, but we just thought it really important that we honor him. You know, sometimes when you think in Caribbean, you can think about the prime ministers, you think about the entertainers, and obviously you think about the cricketers. But there are many other people there that we need to be honoring across the region. And Julian Rogers is one of those for everything that he's given to the region from a journalistic, from a media perspective, everything that he's done. So without further ado, we are going to bring him in now to have a chat with us. Mm-hmm. Sir.
Rogers.
How are you doing?
Goatee gone, man.
You see?
Long.
I know, that's why I didn't do it. You know, I was going to do it. I was like, nah, no.
long time.
How you doing,
from
man?
Kingston, Jamaica.
Greetings to you, man. It is fantastic to have you in the living room today. And not just to have you, but to have you to honor you. Fantastic.
Indeed.
Some people would say you guys are biased because all you're bacon.
Oh, shoot.
No, but the whole Caribbean claims you, Julian. So I don't think anyone would think that we bias. I don't think anyone would think we bias at all. Everyone, when we announce this show, if you see the comments are from Jamaica in the north to Suriname in the south. It's like everybody, the entire region claims you. So I don't think anybody would say we bias.
Nah.
Fair enough. That's a good comeback.
and I'm sure
I couldn't help but hear you guys talk about what's happening in England. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I want to tell you that it is wonderful to be in the Caribbean, where it's extremely hot.
Indeed.
Agents say it's very hot in Barbados, and Trini say they just shared with me that they have heat. Right. So I have to tell them Jamaica is also hot. So up and down this region, the weather is fantastic. We got the heat, which I'm sure many of you would love to have in a few months' time.
Ingrid Riley said Julian is Jamaican. We stole him.
Ingrid piling in already.
Yeah.
Tremendous. So, look, Julian, first of all, how are you doing? How are you doing? How's your family? How are you keeping in this really uncertain season?
Well, I think God was good to me and to us, I should say, by making sure that we're in Jamaica at this time.
How?
Because one, I've got a good job, working with a fantastic set of people, and then of course from a family point of view, I've got Alison here, and we added one more member to the family, Brandy, who is a Shih Tzu, and she's taken over our lives more so than any big child that we would have had nurtured. But so from that point of view, we're very happy. Jamaica is a lot to discover. So you're not you're not on 166 square miles, or in Trinidad for that matter, or Antigua and Barbuda or Montserrat. So every opportunity we get, we forge out on the highway, etc., and try to discover as much of Jamaica. And we're really in love
That
with
sounds
this country,
exciting.
and I think
Yeah.
the country loves our presence as well. So
Aye.
we're happy.
Clearly.
What what would be some of your top spots in Jamaica?
Aye.
Venturing out.
Oh, where do we begin?
Aye.
Last All Year's and the New Year's, we went up to the grill, which is quite a
That's
drive. 4 or 5 hours depending on how quickly you want to get there. And that was a side of Jamaica that was really, really special. So we've come around the coast, so to speak, and enjoyed all the attractions, and we tend to go to. We've been going to various hotels, whether they're big luxury or little ones or guest houses, as the case may be, to get a real island feel. And that's been very good. So that when we want to see the beach, an hour or just over an hour or so, we head out to Ocho Rios, where the beaches are great as well. And if we want a longer drive, we can go to Montego Bay. But the country there's so much to discover. It's unbelievable. But as a real small island guy, we like to see the beach.
Yeah, see the beach.
As often as possible. And having been pampered by Antigua, where we could get to the beach in 10 minutes, is a little hard. But we enjoy the drive. Great highways with you pay the toll, etc. But good and safe, and you can turn around and sometimes we leave in the morning on one day and go to Ocho Rios and come back in the afternoon by evening. But of course, all that now is shifted with the curfew. So we can go on a Friday evening and come back on a Saturday afternoon like we did yesterday. So Jamaica is good, really and truly. I mean, in spite of everything else, whether it's the politics or the COVID or whatever the case, or crime, we feel safe. Obviously, we take the necessary precautions that people should in any country, and we're enjoying it. Really is really, really, really great.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Excellent.
And it's great to understand.
Yeah, and you talk about curfew there just now. How are people in Jamaica feeling? Is it a sense of weariness at the moment? Fear, trepidation? Do they feel hopeful? How are people feeling in general?
It depends on the circumstance and the people, right? Let's start first with the most critical one, which was the lockdowns. We had 3-day lockdowns, which is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It really took a toll on a lot of people, particularly in the commercial sector. So government offices are closed. Some commercial activity, in terms of drugstores and gas stations, etc. But the real lockdown, I mean, really affected a lot of people, and it was a worrying situation. Now they've taken that off, and they're back to putting the curfew now on the weekdays, so that it's until 8 o'clock, and yesterday 6 o'clock on a Saturday. So you see the massive traffic, everybody trying to get, inside the curfew, etc. But the overarching worry really is about people's response to the vaccination programs. They've had blitzes in large venues like the National Stadium, etc. And they've also then been going out into the rural communities to the health centers, and Jamaica has several hospitals, so they've got those facilities as well. Then the private sector got involved in supporting the government's purchase of vaccines, and a number of companies have had their own blitzes literally within their compounds. And at last report, in the hotel sector, they have somewhere between 50 to 60% of the staff already vaccinated. So people are responding, because the constant message here is that if we don't tackle this now, more people will lose jobs. Government will have a harder time trying to support everybody, for that matter, and we'll have more deaths. And therefore, the real challenge is to encourage people to get there without making it mandatory. And it's like walking on eggshells right now, as far as the government is concerned with that, is, because people keep saying, oh, they were forcing me, etc., to take the vaccine, when no such statement has come from the government at all. It's always about moral suasion.
I'm saying that. I'm saying that a lot of these challenges are around communications, and you are foremost expert in that area. What do you think about the communication? How's the communications being handled in
I
Jamaica, but
think
also across the
the
Caribbean?
yeah, I'll tell you what has been the history of the communication in Jamaica. The government got very high marks for the way that it responded to the COVID, the measures instituted very early up, etc. And you had constant press conferences, regular press conferences, featuring the Prime Minister, the Minister of Health, Dr. Tufton, the Chief Medical Officer, and several other of their cabinet colleagues, etc. Particularly where it referred to things like the curfews imposition in the local government areas and so on. So the communication could not be faulted in the early stages and succeeding. But I think what's happened here, like I've noticed in other Caribbean territories,
Right.
the politician's word is less effective
Yeah.
in the way in the persuasion,
Talk about that quite a bit. Yeah.
and therefore there's a requirement now for more credibility to come from your doctor, your chief medical officer, etc. And I think the governments some governments are recognizing that because they're in a battle for hearts and minds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And therefore, if they fail to convince, or they're not convincing, or that the political battle, it becomes a political battle between the government and the opposition, then you've got problems. And in fact, I noticed yesterday that Prime Minister Mia Mottley took the opportunity at that briefing from the Barbados Mission to call out the opposition for not joining in the effort, etc. And you got that here. I mean, the opposition here in Jamaica calling for the head of the health minister, for instance. So you're dealing with those challenges in a fight that somebody reminded me is really what we dealt with in terms of HIV/AIDS campaigns, where the emphasis really was on communicating by the experts, not only by the experts, but also by those who are affected. So that you had communication coming from people who were affected with HIV/AIDS, living with HIV and AIDS, etc. And I think that really is one of the problems in the communication, because there's the HIV and AIDS had a stigma to attach to it, and COVID has attracted a similar stigma. So people are not ready to tell you that they have COVID, or anybody in their family have COVID.
Yeah.
People are hiding, etc. And what is worrying is that some of the numbers that we share with you may not be all the numbers that they are.
That's not the true picture.
Not the true picture, because people are waiting until they're very, very sick then to go to hospital.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, they needed to act far earlier.
Well, that is really useful to just get that background of what's happening right there in Jamaica. So thank you so much for setting the scene on that, Julian.
Yeah.
Listen, as I said at the top, we're here to honor you. And what I would like to do is to take you back, because people are already here going mad about that beautiful voice of yours.
I'm trying to emulate it, but it's not working for me.
Stop
it's
it.
Not.
But yours is a fascinating life, a fascinating career. Coming towards this area of your career now and seeing COVID. But if you let's go back to Radio Fusion as a 16-year-old young Julian. I got a feeling that you used to get real trouble, as a 16-year-old. I just got a feeling that. Set me straight. Tell me about 16-year-old Julian.
You got the wrong fella.
What? The comments will let me know.
It is interesting that you should say that, right?
Go ahead.
Because I was thinking this morning, a thought came to that I was thinking, how did I get to this position as a 16-year-old? And then it dawned on me that it really was a combination of two people. First, my father, and then a man called Wilbert Callender of the Cooperative High School, and another man called Harold Wharton, who went on to teach at at Combermere.
Combermere.
And also a man who just died recently, O. Cox, who ran the Metropolitan Night Institute. I lived next door, literally as a youngster, to the institute on Barbary Hill. On my father's side, I remember. It's funny you should ask that question because it's only this morning. I remember my father telling his card-playing friends, who, when he said to me, "Turn the radio on for the news," and somebody said, "Does he know how to do the radio?" And he says, "Yeah, don't worry about him. He can handle the radio." Now, I could only have been about 7 or 8 years old at the time.
Wow.
And I was thinking, I thought back, I'm getting freaky now about the memories that are flashing back to me. Because the radio was a mullered radio, a tabletop radio. And we moved from the mullered radio to a Grundig, which is encased with speakers and turntable and all that. So I would say my father gave me that confidence and so on.
Wow.
That's good. Strong.
Harold Wharton was at Wesley Hall when I was there, and it was he who gave me extra lessons, and then
Interesting.
it was he also who, when I failed to get into Harrison College in Combermere, much to his shock, sent my father to see Wilbert Callender, who was just then starting the Cooperative High School, which was in Belleville, in 10th Avenue, Belleville. And I set an exam right there and got a 5-year scholarship.
Wow.
So the question was from Mr. Wharton, what the hell went wrong with you in the second grade?
Wow.
So, yeah, so yeah, Father Wharton, and then O.Sensi, Mr. Cox. The institute was 2 doors down from where I lived on Barbary Hill. And would you believe that he had a class teaching sanitary inspectors hygiene, and I was convinced that I wanted to be a sanitary inspector.
All right.
Because of that exposure to that.
Right.
But I also learned a great deal from Mr. Cox, etc. So I think that in looking at so-called prominence as a youngster, it was really these people pushing me, because at Cooperative High School, if there was anything to be presented to the whole school, it would be Julian Rogers or DaCosta. There was one guy with a double barrel name, or Wifnell Mears. All of us were the big boys, but we're little skinny fellas anyhow.
Yeah, but they hone your public speaking skills.
We were the ones, right? So
Yeah.
we were the ones with the public speakers, and there were a couple other girls as well. You know, so I was not troublesome.
This is fascinating.
Listen, I apologize.
Take it back.
I take it back.
I think it's fascinating that you actually took that time to breathe and look back at who are the people we're here honoring you, but you also look back at the people who have actually instilled something, who've planted seeds inside of you, whether it's confidence or opportunity and so on. Interesting you mentioned Harold Wharton. He was actually my English teacher at Combermere.
Okay.
And when I was 12 years old, and Harold Wharton, he was also sort of the acting deputy head at one point in time, and he used to walk around with a big strap, right? But anyway, there was one time, I also was not troublesome.
I was going to say, it sounded like you was the troublesome one, to be honest with you.
I was not troublesome, but it was just one day I happened to get sent out of class.
Get sent out of class? Wow.
It was just a moment. It was one of the few times. I see a few people from Combermere on, they could attest to this. So I got sent out for talking in class, and I heard Mr. Wharton was coming around. And then someone told me, Mr. Wharton is looking for you.
Whoa.
So I was so nervous now. And then finally, when Mr. Wharton saw me, he said, "Robinson," with a big smile on his face. I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "That short story you wrote was brilliant. You should be a writer." And that stuck with me all these years. The thing is, when I wrote that short story, I was messing around a little bit. But he told me, you should be a writer. And that always stayed with me. In
And
the
you've
back of
become
my
one.
head, regardless of what I do, I always think, write something.
Wow.
You, you must ask me about getting a flogging at cooperative high school.
Well, tell us.
Tell us about it.
It wasn't troublesome, so clearly different out of character.
Indeed.
No,
But no, so go ahead.
Wilbert Callender, and this is a quick one. Wilbert Callender was not just only our headmaster, and I must tell you that Wilbert Callender is Win Callender's father, and
was wondering,
and so on. But he also taught us Latin, maths, etc. But we were upstairs in is it where Martindale's Road meets Halls Road? There was a shop. Well, there was a shop on either side, and we were in one. Our school was set up in that shop. It had been moved from Belleville down there. Anyhow, bottom line was that it was an upstairs, downstairs, and we were in our class was upstairs. A science test was set by a teacher called Miss Harper, lovely red-skinned woman.
Wow.
Sorry, lady. That all of us had a crush on.
Aye.
Oh dear.
She set the test, and all of us in the back row got like 2 out of 100.
Okay.
Back row,
She
man.
promptly sent us downstairs to Mr. Callender for a flogging. Okay?
Yeah, those were the days.
The crush went away that afternoon. I happened to see Ms. Harper later in life. She became a very outstanding nurse at the Queenswolf Hospital. But I was never man enough to tell her that story, even then.
That's fantastic. But in the early days at 16 and at Radio Fusion and what's not, what was that like? What was that like going in? Did you know what you wanted to do? Were you welcome, or did you take the bull by the horn? What was that like for you?
With I have to give you the quick story. You have to ask me how I got to Radio Fusion in the first
Yeah,
place.
but how you get there? Yeah, okay.
Again, to denounce Mark that I was not a scam.
There.
A group of us, we were having a school concert at Christmas time in 1963. And Mr. Callender said, you guys need to advertise this on the radio. So he sent myself and a couple of others up to Radio Fusion to buy what we call a What's On. And so we arrived there around lunchtime, only to find that the only person who could talk to us about advertising was the sales manager, a man called John Oxley. So we transacted the business and so on. And at the end of it, he turned to me and he said, young man, are you interested in radio? And I said, yes, but I really want to go to university first before I would even consider working and, getting a job. Okay. It turned out that CBC Radio Barbados started on the 15th of December of 1963. Okay. And there was I in December of 1963 talking about wanting to work in radio. And he said to me, well, how old are you? And I said, I just turned 16. Now, my birthday was November 1963. And he says, well, that's a little young by our standards, but if any later date you're still interested in radio, come and see us. 63 December, my father retired from the Barbados Public Service. He was the chief pensions officer for St. Michael. My father and I lived alone, just the two of us. So I had no idea that about a pension. As far as I was concerned, if my father wasn't going to work, there'd be no money. So quietly, I went back to Radio Fusion and asked to see Mr. Oxley, told him what my situation was. And so he promptly sent me downstairs to the program manager's office, which was Frank Pardo's office. And the secretary there arranged for me to have an audition same day. And I would say about 2 weeks later, so this was January of 64. And subsequently, I got this call saying, would I come and meet a Radio Fusion? I went to see Mr. Frank Pardo. And Frank Pardo said, "Look, you've done a great audition, and we'd like to look to hire you as a radio announcer." He says, "The only problem is that you're so young, and that many of the people you work with are old enough to be a father." And I said, "Well, I have to tell you, I'm the head boy at my school, and everybody else is older than me."
Well,
So he said, "All right, you can start 1st March 1964." So that's how I got to Rediffusion. And I went home, of course, to my father to tell him I had a job, and he was quite surprised that I had gone that route, etc. And then he explained to me that he would get a pension.
Everything was all right.
But it was too late, and he promptly put me in the toilet, and said, "No, I'm serious. This is an interesting one." It says, "Go into the toilet, put your fingers in your ears, and start practicing saying this. This is the voice of Barbados, Rediffusion."
Wow. Wow.
Whoa.
Oh, man, that
That was my
childhood.
first. That was the first set of earphones.
Aye.
yeah.
Say that again, Julian. Just do it again.
You put your fingers in your ear, and you just practice. And so in the wall of the toilet, your voice is resounding, and you go, "This is the voice of Barbados, Rediffusion." And of course, he's making sure that I get the rediffusion right.
Yeah.
Etc.
Wow. But I want to step back one step to Oxley.
John
What
Oxley,
was-
yes.
Yeah, what was it
That he saw.
that made him say, "Young man, are you interested in radio?" Do you know what would have triggered that?
Without being vain, I would think that I would think okay. So I mean, you guys keep referring to my voice already. So here was a little skinny fella whose elbows are not growing any bigger in whatever years later. Just speaking, so I would have gone into the room and introduced and said, "Look, we're from the Cooperative High School, and we're looking to advertise our Christmas concert, and we'd like to make the arrangements." So I think presentation, and all of us, I mean, Mr. Callender would not have sent, mealy mouth people to represent the Cooperative High School at all. So that I think was my first. I can look back now and say that obviously I had some presence, and that was what attracted. And I have to tell you that John Oxley has been the one of the first people I refer to every time I've been making a professional move, except for maybe coming to Jamaica because but he just died last year, and but I can talk about him for hours because he's been every move I've made. I've always made a phone call or gone to see him and say, "John, I mean, I know Margaret Allman in Barbados will be saying they call him Jono, but I never been able to call him Jono, Mr. Oxley. I've got so. What do you think?" And I can tell you great stories about that relationship.
Well.
That's absolutely fascinating.
And when you initially did the interview and you was offered the role, they did say that you'll be younger and everyone will be older. What was it like then, walking into that?
I walked in there and was met by a man called Nick Stanford, formerly of the NBC of the United States, real international broadcaster. And he walked me down from the program manager's office down the corridor of Rediffusion, and he said to me, "Can you type?" And I said, "Yes." My father bought me a typewriter when I was 14, and I learned over the summer and so on. So we were walking down the corridor, and he walks me into the program department, and he says, "We want you to start here." Starting here was learning to be a script writer.
Wow.
Yeah.
And boy, I can tell you that I went into a school in that room. Oliver Chandler was librarian. His assistant was Sam Harewood. Marquita McKenzie was a script writer. young, God, I can't remember Cummins' first name right now, but it'll come back to me. She wrote scripts as well. Um, uh, Gosh, Teddy was also in that library. He was also a library assistant, etc. But the key person in that room for me in the program department was a guy called Kevin Arthur, a Trinidadian Bajan, who wrote poetry, loved great music. I mean, his choice, his musical taste was just broad and so on and so on. And I could tell you about him loving Bartok, etc. Nobody loved Bartok but him in the whole wide world. But it was in that room that I learned to write for radio. And I always tell this story to young journalists and people in radio about the discipline that Kevin Arthur put in me. He said to me one day, look, you may have been able to write great essays at school, but now for radio, you need to learn to write for radio.
Wow.
And I had the misfortune, so to speak, of making a one hour show called Showtime on Sundays, and the music on the album was an hour and a half. So my job was to decide which cuts went, and to write a script, etc., drawing on the liner notes on the back of the album. And I always tell people that the first maybe 2 or 3 months, and I wanted to stick home. When I wrote, let's say that the whole program script was 6 pages. When I wrote the first page and I took it to him to review, he'd take his red pen and he'd go through it.
Oh my word.
And so help me God, by the time he was finished, there was no black on the page.
Just blood.
That was page 1, huh?
Yeah.
Remember, I have to get to page 6, guys.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have to get to page 6. So I would go back and I would write and write, and he would think. And every Saturday afternoon for a period, he and I were in that office while everybody else had gone to the cinema to watch Audie Murphy, etc. And he was working with me to make sure that I understood how to write for radio. And the first day that he handed me back the script and says, "You don't have to bring it again," boy, I was a lottery winner at that point.
Wow, of course.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I feel real good.
So that grounding and writing has served me throughout my career.
Tremendous.
I remember doing some work for a supplement for the Nation newspaper subsequently, and Harold White took one look at it and he says, "Let me tell you something. You could write for radio, you can't write for the paper. You got to write more copy than that." Yeah. So
okay, go ahead.
so that was my introduction, and thank God for my father having bought that typewriter 2 years earlier.
Yeah, you can imagine.
And giving me the Pitman's typewriting courses, etc.
Pitman?
So I
did Pitman's
had 60 words a minute.
Wow,
I mean,
fast, man.
before long.
Well, listen, you've mentioned your father on a few occasions now. Tell us a bit about your parents, actually.
My parents are both from Guyana, so I think I should be able to go and claim some of that oil and money.
Are you
Get
Now is a
down
good
there
time.
quick. Get down
Not
there
a bad
quick.
time to claim that. Not a bad time to claim, guy.
So both my parents are from Guyana, yes.
Okay.
And my father was a member of the police band in Guyana, and in fact also played and led dance bands up and down the Essequibo. And obviously he came to Barbados at a particular time. My mother was a seamstress. The Rogers family was very well known for two things: music and ballroom dancing.
Aye.
So I had an uncle on my mother's side who was eventually became bandmaster in Guyana. And music permeated all of these Rogers families. And my father played every instrument. And I saw him play once in Barbados at the Gall Hills Social Center. We'd gone out there and and we got into the hall where there was a Bram during daytime Bram, something like that. And one of the musicians on the stage spotted my father and said, Send Val, come man, come. And they threw the double bass at him. Ooh. And my father started playing like hell, and his glasses falling off his face and all the sweat and everything else. It's the only time I've seen him play an instrument. Wow. But he did have a saxophone in the house. And one day he saw me looking at the saxophone and he said, no music for you. And he promptly went out and sold that saxophone. Oh, wow. And I always tell people that he would eventually live to see that I learned to play the turntable, so I didn't need the saxophone.
Why did he say no music for you?
Yeah. Well, music, and I mean, even to today, music is not necessarily the most lucrative of professions to pursue. And I think he'd had his experience of playing in the police band in Guyana, and of course with dance bands and so. But he never played. I mean, in Barbados. I mean, he knew all the people. Ernie Small and all these people, etc. All the musicians at the time. But he was determined that I would not get into music. Although in the house and in that Grundig radio with the 78s, etc., we had a range of music. I mean, whether it was the torch singers, whether it was classical music, whether it was jazz, etc., everything was in that library of ours. And it was interesting that many moons ago I went to Minneapolis on one of those U.S. State Department tours, and the chap who was responsible for looking after me at a station called WCCO said he and his wife would take me to see the Minneapolis Symphony play. And as luck would have it, they played the New World Symphony by Dvorak. And I was humming, and the guy literally looked around. He couldn't believe that I knew I knew this symphony, every part, because it'd been playing over and over in my house. Wow, and then obviously subsequently rediffusion, etc. But so that was so my mother, being a seamstress, etc. She went on. They parted ways, and she went back to Guyana and eventually to the United States, where she lived until she died. And it was, a lady with a great heart. I'll have to spend another 2 hours talking about her. Wow. Okay. But my father, I'll tell you a quick one with him. No computers, right? So as the old age pension officer for St. Michael, he had to fill out all the cards with the names and the addresses and the amounts and whatever else. And so I would help him by calling the names and the addresses and everything. And he had he was a lithographer, whatever the word is. Anyway. You understand it? Yeah. His penmanship was unmistakable. Wow. And do you know, I never inherited that either. So I don't get the music. I don't get the penmanship.
You got the typewriter.
Yeah, so I'm the typewriter. The typewriter is my savior.
Exactly.
And hearing you talk about the symphony there reminds me of a program on Radio Fusion back in the day called Music to Remember, man. Oh my God.
Music to Remember. And we had in the studio we had a huge thesaurus of classical music, so that every announcer was expected to know exactly how to pronounce every one of those words, all the movements, all the composers, everything, left, right, and center. You dare not make a mistake, because you would be at the mercy of Frank Pardo, but worst of all, Alfred Pragnell, who, if he puts you down, you feel worse than a whatever. Right? Yes.
So moving on then to and listen, guys, when we have our legends in, we just let them tell their story, because
and
it is
exactly.
important. This is very, very important.
And important for everyone to know, we don't do interviews, we have conversations. So that's the way
Absolutely.
how we doing this afternoon. Go ahead, Mark.
Absolutely. So there was a stint in Montserrat as well, I see, in the late 60s. You want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I will skip the rediffusion experiences for now and tell you that at rediffusion for 4 years I managed to do everything. I got involved not only on the air where I started with a little 15-minute program. Dick Stanford died, and that opened the way for me to become an announcer and to join George Mossbaugh and All Globe Seal and so on and so on, and Frank Yusuf Ali and Arnold Rampersad and so on. These are outstanding broadcasters at the time, coming from Trinidad, Guyana, the U.S., Canada, etc. And so after 4 years, I decided, hey, I can't see myself moving up in this organization unless I buy a gun and shoot everybody. So I decided the safest thing was to put an ad in the paper and saying that the simple in a another WhatsApp and a classified, I said, are you looking for a man? And then below that, I'm interested in advertising, public relations, etc. And I got a call from Corbin Compton, and I ended up working at Corbin Compton for 1969. And then John Oxley also called me in then at that point while I was at Corbin Compton to do my first television show, which is Heinz Hotline. But we'll talk about the times when I got fired. That was one of them.
I was gonna say we're gonna come forward to all those times because we can't miss them.
Yeah.
But obviously you had a lot of journeys, and we can stop at each one of those along the way. You can tell us stories from each and every one. But what made you the Caribbean person?
Radio Antilles.
Radio Antilles. And why is that? What was the experience there?
Remember, at that time, we all listened to Radio Antilles across the Caribbean. And it was Michael Rudder who, when he found out that I'd been fired and no job, etc., I was thinking I had been working on putting out a magazine called Cuckoo for Barbados. And the man who fired me called up the printing press, trying to remember the press on Country Road, and said to them, look, give Julian Rogers any help you can. But Michael Rudder intervened and said, look, they're looking for a radio announcer in Montserrat at Radio Antilles. Why don't you go? Made a call, and before long, I was on a plane going to Little Montserrat. And arriving there at the airport, drove down, looking around this strange place, got into town, this quaint little town, etc. And I was saying, boy, I really think I should go back home tomorrow, man. What is this? Right? But then the next day, I met the leaders, the owners, operators, etc. And before long, I was on the air doing the morning show. The morning show was 1 hour between 6 and 7, and that's where I made a few people in Barbados angry because they didn't like Michael Jackson at the time in the Jackson 5. One guy used to write and tell me they sounded like rats in a barrel, squealing, etc. But I also drew a lot of fans everywhere from particularly Grenada, Tobago, St. Vincent, and Lucia Dominica, and to a lesser extent Antigua, more so St. Kitts, etc. I mean, I could tell you because of the fan mail that came in tons of fan mail came into Radio Antilles, and we were able to really pinpoint. So Radio Antilles was the real foundation of my becoming the first stage in terms of Caribbean. And I spent about 10 months there, and as a radio personality doing the morning show. And then my father died, and I came home to Barbados in September of 70. And on my way back, I had heard that there's a new radio station being set up in Antigua. So I got off the plane, and we had, you had a number of hours free in transit. So I went to find the people behind this radio station. Turned out to be a radio station owned by the Bird family, and the program director was a chap called Jody Owen from Ohio in the United States. And we got on, immediately. I met Ivor Bird, who was the real brains behind the station, a son of Old Man Bird. And so I agreed that I would come and join the station. But when I went back to Radio Antilles, and I told everybody I was leaving, they had a farewell for me. And they treated me so royally that I started to cry and say to my wife, look, we can't go and leave radio. We can't leave Montserrat. But I'd given my word. So my wife at the time, Denise, and we had a young daughter at the point who was just very young. I mean, just born literally. And so we went off to Antigua to ZDK. But I would come back 2 years later to Radio Antilles as the man in charge of the radio station.
Okay.
Wow.
And that was the opportunity. So that would be 72 to 74. And there's where Radio Antilles was already doing an award-winning newscast at 6 o'clock every evening that, tracked all the developments across the region. But my idea was that we had staff from Montserrat. We had a few other people, but most of it was about the correspondence filing to us, radio reports, etc., or telex. And I said, what would really be great is if we brought each one of those correspondents to live and work out of Montserrat.
Wow.
They would then be the point of expanded coverage of what's happening in the various territories. And the other sneaky thing I had in my mind was to be able to get to play the music of the islands on Radio Antilles, because the playlist at that time was made up principally of English hits,
English music,
because the most of the DJs were from England, and then some of the American Hot 100, Billboard Hot 100. So I was very upset, and I tell this story to the guy called Brendan Parr, who was like the top guy there among the personalities, an old Pirates DJ, and his idea of Caribbean music was to play the Merry Men and Sparrow. That was his exposure, and it would annoy the hell out of me, and so systematically I started to ask questions about the music from the other islands, Dominica, St. Lucia, and that's where the cadence came onto the chart. The Jamaican music came onto the chart, and in fact, there were a couple of things that happened. Ken Lazarus, Hail the Man, became the number one on the Radio Antilles Fun 40, and that was like God. I mean, record breaking. And then later on, there was a hit out of Dominica from the Gaylords Power Union called "Hit Me with Music." That went to number one. I think they must have declared a holiday in Dominica on that Sunday when we announced that "Hit Me with Music" was number one. People couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And we were playing this from a famous guitarist out of St. Lucia, Boo Hinkson, for instance. We were playing the music of St. Vincent. We got into the calypso, etc., with Beckett and that kind of thing. There were groups out of Grenada we played who didn't have records but sent us tapes.
Wow.
And so on. So it built up. And then, St. Kitts had Ellie Matt. And then when Christmas came along, we discovered that there was music out of the Virgin Islands at Christmas time. So we started building up the music. And we also then, of course, pulled a lot of personalities, journalists, into Radio Antilles, into Montserrat. So you had people like Don Bob out of St. Vincent, who I will tell you, if you send Don Bob down the road to get one story, he'll come out with six. We had Raymond Lawrence out of Dominica, tremendous voice, great talent, could do anything. We had Jeff Fede out of St. Lucia, Lou Smith out of Grenada, fantastic journalist, etc. We even managed to get a journalist out of St. Kitts, which is a long story, but Lillian Caesar was a great talent there. and it was good to get somebody out of that territory. Difficult to get out of Antigua because we couldn't find a so-called independent journalist at that time. It took a little time for us to be able to get a couple of people in there, but that was the aim, and that was the Caribbean foundation that really got going there with the support of Deutsche Welle, who became the new owners of Radio Angeles.
Okay. Well,
Deutsche Welle.
go ahead, Ray.
Now, I was gonna say, it's great hearing what you're saying there. I can hear myself feeding back into someone's thing. I'm not sure what's happening there, but someone said that it was great for Eastern Caribbean integration. Is that what you were trying to set out to do? And if so, what were you not seeing that you were trying to build, and why?
I don't know. I just had I don't think that that I was smart enough to even coach what we were doing as regional integration. I just saw an opportunity to build a radio station beyond what it was doing at that time. And I thought that it was important for us to change over the pirate music concept of the radio station, and just what should I say? I felt we needed to do more news because I realized how valuable the news was for the other territories. And let me give you a reason, a background on that. Remember, at the time, you had the Windward Islands Broadcasting Service, which was really a radio network, both AM and shortwave, to serve the banana producing territories, Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica. They were owned by the governments. So ownership by the governments meant that in terms of news, the news of the day was managed by people who were beholden to the governments. Radio Angeles, by establishing its network of correspondents, was able to get stories out of those territories that was in conflict with what the national station was telling you. So I recognized the value of that, and the German owners also did, and we said, look, the best thing for us to do is to set up and get more of our people. So whether they're on the ground, they're independent. Alistair Hughes was a famous correspondent in Grenada. He reported for Reuters. But we also had a correspondent on the ground in Grenada. Sorry. And it was a situation where our correspondent would say one thing and Alistair Hughes would say something else. So we put on both of them.
All right.
And of course, that got people thinking, well, what the hell is happening here? So eventually, I mean, I think at one point, Alistair Hughes thought I was the devil because I would challenge his reporting.
Oh, wow.
All right.
And I will also challenge our correspondence reporting. And I said, guys, you covering the same story, but we're getting two different stories there, et cetera, et cetera. Something is fundamentally wrong.
Right.
And I can't allow this. And at that time, I had convinced a guy called Dick Henderson out of Trinidad to come to Montserrat and head the newsroom. And people who know Dick Henderson, who is now a multimillionaire and owns an Indian radio station in Trinidad, done very well. So he was as concerned as I was about this matter. And we had another instance where John Compton, Prime Minister at the time of St. Lucia, was complaining about our correspondent. And I said, Dick, you need to go to St. Lucia and spend a week or so, find out exactly what's happening. Why is the Prime Minister objecting to our reporting? It turned out that our correspondent was biased. Our correspondent turned out to be a supporter of the Labour Party at the time, and not the UWP. You know, so I think those situations fashioned our approach to news. And of course, I explained already what the music situation was, because even a Bajan who was working at Radio Angeles at the time did not have that ethos about this music, etc. I won't call his name, but he would come to the station in the afternoons and go to the library and go to the shelf and just pull out any set of music that fit in his hand and go in the air and play. You know, I wasn't in charge at that time, but by the time I got back to Radio, at least he was gone. Thank
Fair
God.
enough.
And we didn't have to deal with that. So I say that's the foundation. The other thing is Montserrat played a very important part in that foundation.
All right.
Montserrat was a mini United Nations. There were people living in Montserrat from all over the world, and therefore, in my circle, as I built up a circle, I was learning things from many people, and also we had a French service and a Spanish service, and eventually we also added German as well. So it meant that I was in a rural community, and my head was expanded, etc. I mean, it was such that I even was in charge of the French service at one point, even though my French was as good as when I left school. You know what I mean? But that was the foundation, definitely the foundation.
That's absolutely fascinating. So look, let's pause there for a moment. Actually, you want to come in, Dre?
Yeah, I mean, so we were thinking, well, how best we can really explain to people what a Caribbean man you are. And the best way to do that is really to let other Caribbean people that you may have influenced over the years do so and share a little bit. So we got a few people who are going to drop in from time to time here now in this second hour. So we're going to go down to Suriname at the moment and bring in our good friend who's become one of our good friends and yours, Ivan Cairo as well. From Suriname. How you doing, Ivan? You're on mute.
How are you doing, my friend Julian? How are you doing, guys?
Hey.
Doing good.
Good, Ivan. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it was just enjoyable hearing from Julian, his background, and his past. It was refreshing because I know him for a long time, but some of the stories he just told, I never heard them before.
That's good.
Ivan, it is good to see you, Ivan, and yes, we go back quite some time. Thanks, of course, to our Caribbean media family.
Yes.
Indeed. Ivan, you want to share with us a little bit about your first encounters with Julian and what that was like?
Well, I was thinking back about the first time I met Julian, and yesterday I thought maybe I was wrong, but maybe Julian can clarify where we met. If I'm correct, we met in Guyana for the first time, or it was in Guadeloupe. What was it, Julian? Guyana or Guadeloupe?
It was Guadeloupe.
Okay, it was Guadeloupe.
Yes.
All right. And when we talk about this, that you was coming on the show, I remember the first time we met. It was indeed Guadeloupe at the weekend culture in Guadeloupe with Katie and stuff.
Yes.
And we were talking, and it was Julian who, in fact, introduced me to writing for regional news outlets. When we were talking, he asked me about if I'm doing anything outside of Suriname. When I told him that I was only writing for the Suriname newspaper, he told me, I will set you up with somebody. And he linked me up, I think it was 2 days or maybe a couple of days after I returned to Suriname, with the now late Norman Gustamas, who was the editor at Caribbean News Now. And it was from that moment on that I started writing in a regional perspective, stories from Suriname, from a Surinamese perspective to the broader region and the world. So I would say that it was that encounter with Julian who brought me into the journalism family in the region to become a known journalist in the Caribbean. And from there on, a lot of assignment came from that one meeting we had in Guadeloupe. So thank you for that, my friend.
No, that's tremendous. And how has that influence actually gone on to help you throughout your career, Ivan?
Well, tell you, after I started writing for Caribbean News now, I got more assignments from that, from all over the world.
Wow.
To tell you the truth, even from Al Jazeera, I got an assignment.
Wow.
And the way they found me was on, it was then called CNN. It was on CNN. They found the name Ivan Cairo writing from Suriname. So they linked up with me, and I helped them produce a story they did here in Suriname regarding the, how you call it, ex-president, the former president, Mr. Desi Bouterse, and other stuff in Suriname. So that's the influence that encounter with Julian had on my life as a journalism, or as a journalist, and in the region. It helped me uh, get my confidence, and also to be the best that I can be in journalism.
Tremendous.
Was he a good guy to work for, or was he a taskmaster? You can be honest.
Well, well, well.
It's only
we-
just us
we-
here in the living room.
No. We were on several occasions. We were on how do you call it? How do you call it again? In media, on not like a board, but how do you call it in Dutch? Anyway, we worked some assignments where we had to comment some on issues like the inaugural events in Guadeloupe for the museum that is there now. And also on other occasions, me and Julian sat in the same platform to discuss media matters, journalism matters in the region. So that was the influence he had. And built on his experience, I could take a lot of what he was saying at those forums into my work, and to adapt and to take away from them what I needed in my work.
No, that is tremendous.
You're on mute, Julian.
What
Oops.
when he got into this regional circle, people like Wesley Gibbons and so on, and Karan Miraj always made sure that Ivan or Suriname was represented in any of the regional media gatherings, and he's done a great job of representing Suriname, and also, of course, as you heard him, not only taking Suriname to the rest of the Caribbean, but certainly to the rest of the world, and that's so very important. We tend to be very insular in the English-speaking Caribbean and not pay attention to what's happening in the Dutch-speaking Caribbean. And I hope that we'll get a chance to talk about the relationships that I have nurtured with French, Dutch, Caribbean, particularly because I feel it is so very important. The Spanish too.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
Julian was part of my journey. When I became a journalist in 1995, it was just like, okay, you're a journalist. And when I became president of the Surinamese Journalists Association in 2000, the first thing I noticed was that Suriname was not involved in nothing about journalism in the region. Nothing.
Right.
At that time, you had the defunct, was it not Kana? Maybe Julian can help me. The organization at that time.
Yes.
And when I wrote in archives, all the things, and Suriname was never mentioned in one of those things.
wow.
And I made it my mission to put Suriname in front of the Caribbean. When I was going to seminars and workshops in the region, I took loans to pay for my ticket. I took loans for my hotel and stuff like that. Colleagues in Suriname were calling me crazy. Hey, you are crazy. Why your company don't pay for it? And I told them that I was investing in myself, and I had like a mission for myself to put Suriname in front of the Caribbean. And to tell you the truth, today a lot of the younger journalists who came after me in the job are benefiting from the foundation I have laid in the past 20 years.
Fantastic. That's tremendous, and that's part of how we honor your legacy, Julian. But we've got somebody else as well.
Indeed,
Thank you,
indeed.
Ivan.
And
Yeah.
and you can say as
there, Ivan.
recognizable as Julian's voice is, this other voice is also equally recognizable across the region. They said apologies because they couldn't come on camera, but however, they wanted to be here. So they're going to come on, you'll only hear their voice, but they will be here. And I'm, of course, talking about none other than from Barbados, Alison Leacock, who wanted to come and say hello as well. Alison, you there?
The real JR. Of course I'm here. The real JR. How could I miss this? Absolutely not. I mean,
Why can't we see you?
you know very well why you cannot see me. I had a dental procedure yesterday. I'm trying to get myself in a presentable manner for something that I should be doing with the same real GR from Tuesday. So he knows very well. Unfortunately, I would love to have my camera on to give him some faces, as some expression. But nonetheless, I could not miss this opportunity to salute, as we would say in local parlance, a real media icon. He has been, just stellar from my first encounter and right through, and he's evergreen. So there are just so many things about Julian that are distinctive in the profession and that separate him from all others, in my view. Do you want me to start, or you're going to ask me? You may not want to hear everything I say.
No, let it all come
Go
out.
on.
As we say in
Yeah.
Barbados, come out things.
Give us some stories.
I have a feeling that the stories would end up with you being cut off.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that
Come
kind
on.
of stories.
Big Finance will tell you to go brave.
Go brave, Alison. Come on.
No, I think the thing about Julian is that he's relentless about standards. But at the same at the same time, he had what I like to call a sort of barefoot elegance and true leadership. He'd be like, we got to get this done by tomorrow. And, he had a team with him, I dare say, that didn't know anything about sleep. So we had some deadlines, and we would be working. Nobody's checking the clock or anything. And Rogers would just turn up 1 o'clock in the morning with food, to the team. And there was just an energy. I haven't met many people who are able to inspire at the level of young. I was a green broadcaster relatively at the time that I encountered Julian. Of course, everybody felt they knew him because, he is, in my view, the voice. And the voice has not changed. He's getting a little younger, but the voice. So I think that was certainly something that astounded me, that here was this very delicate balance between ensuring that we didn't miss a beat. And truth be told, you couldn't miss a beat because he seemed to have ears all around him 24/7, 365. I mean, don't make a mistake, Like, what's that foolishness you just tell me? What's that? Did not miss a beat. And don't be around him when he gets back.
Wow.
Just ease out of the studio quietly. Or if you see him push the door and the door hits,
All right.
you are in deep doo-doo. Make no mistake, at the end of that doo-doo, you come out understanding your role, and you recognize clearly that this is really not about you and your ego or anything of that sort. It is really always about the zenith. So for me, I did nothing but grow under his leadership. Tremendous. But you really didn't feel it was a top-down relationship. We were really a team. And he is, I would have to say, Chief Limer. And certainly, as Ivan said from Suriname, definitely a taskmaster. Don't, as we would say, don't get tired.
As you know, you know.
You really have to work. But he is quite prepared to innovate, to break boundaries. He talks about Vic talking about going bold. He went mega bold, took chances, and really broke a lot of traditions. So definitely a trendsetter, bold enough to try new things, but always to energize the workplace and really he eats, breathes, sleeps the media. No question about that. And even when he is not directly involved in it, he found a way. I mean, I can't remember which country he was in, because again, the gentleman has lived just about all over the Caribbean.
Of course.
So it's difficult to pin him down per country.
Sure.
Yeah? But he was somewhere and he was not directly involved on air. And my boy still found a way to find some avenue on social media to broadcast. And I dare say, I think there was either an earthquake or a hurricane. And Rogers
Dominica hurricane.
Dominica. Rogers had the information more updated than people that were broadcasting. So, this is what for me is how media ought to be, how you really make it live. And there's also obviously he is a consummate communicator, so he talks to everybody, can switch codes easily, effortlessly. So he's a professional. He's got passion and compassion, and that for me makes him a really complete, real Caribbean media icon. And I thank him for all he infused in my profession, and I thoroughly enjoyed. I still do. If anybody says Julian Rogers wants you to, it is highly unlikely I will say no.
Wow.
So I salute the real JR for being a tremendous contributor to the richness and the quality of real broadcasting in the Caribbean.
What a great tribute.
Indeed.
That is absolutely
Fantastic tribute, Alison.
Thank you very much, Alison. Alison keeps referring to a team, and I'm so happy she did that, because Alison is talking about the days of Voice of Barbados. And I'll tell you quick things that happened. I was at CBC at the time, acting as head of radio production. No, head of I was acting as program manager, right? And also head of productions, because Elombe Mardi had asked me to hold on so he could go and run Crop Over. And I got this offer to come to Voice of Barbados. And I went down there before taking out the post, and they gathered I said I wanted to meet the staff, the radio people, and I walked into Studio 3. Everybody's assembled there, and the team of people was absolutely blow mind, really, because there was Linda Walron, Alison Leacock, Balky Roach, Kent Jordan. I mean, only the best of the best, really, in real terms. And she's right when she says that I was. I think some people thought I was crazy anyhow, because the first thing out of my mouth was, we have to change the entire program schedule, and starting with the national anthem. Now, the national anthem is sacred in Barbados on rediffusion. So there was no. Absolutely. So I mean, that was the first signal that I was prepared to change everything. And I said, why is it that the national anthem is not sung? And somebody said, but there is a vocal version. And I said, well, can I hear it? And somebody ran off and came back with Doris Provençals and her group performing the national anthem. I said, so let's start there. That's where we start. That's the first thing we'll change. We change the national anthem. 1. 2, we will do our own news. We'll drop everything that is from foreign. And they said, what? You're going to drop the BBC and CBC and Deutsche Welle and Radio Canada and the Chinese newscast that comes every night, etc. I say, yes, all of them go. I said, let's clear out the schedule and start from scratch. So, but I think that one of the if you ask me about my best times in radio, Radio Antilles would be 1 and Voice of Barbados would be 2, because I work with a team of people who are unbelievable. Adding to that team was Alison Seeley-Smith, whom Monsignor Blackett brought to our attention. And I could go on about the operators, you know, who were there, and so on. But I think Voice of Barbados was about the best team assembled at any time in Caribbean radio, as far as I'm concerned. And we were able to move ourselves from what I call number 4 in the 3-station market to number 1 within 6 months by the time the survey came out. And the station never looked back. But it was thanks to people like Alison Leacock, who I always call Word Perfect. I remember doing the news with her. We decided we'd do the news at 5:30, and she and I would read the news, and I'd make mistakes, but not she. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Word Perfect was the software at that time. The word processing, remember?
Yeah.
So I always call her Word Perfect.
We're perfect.
Diction out of this world. I mean,
she was another voice too, like your voice. Her
Beautiful.
voice was very
Beautiful.
distinctive.
Yeah.
fantastic voice. So don't let her fool you. Talking about how good I am.
Oh, we did.
She's
You
one of the best.
know.
Huh?
know that teacher you was talking about? That
And you notice a reference she made to food, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 1
She's
o'clock
still
in the
there?
morning.
She's there. Yeah.
She listening.
She love her
I
belly.
am very much here. I'm a foodist. I am a foodist. An unapologetic foodist.
No, but
Hey, Mark, you was gonna say
seriously,
something there just now, and we was gonna say.
I was going to say, Julian, listen, you were talking about a teacher earlier that you had a crush on.
yes.
As we said, don't get tired of Barbados. Every young fella had a crush on Alison Leacock. Back then. and still love her today.
This is
I'm
true.
not,
This
I'm not
is
going to
true.
say too much more.
I can
Let's
only
get in
agree.
trouble myself.
Can you save that for her salute?
She'd be blushing now, so she's probably happy she don't have the camera on at the moment. But this is true. This is true.
I am not on camera.
We had great times.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I was going to ask a
fine.
question there, Julian, though, because some of the changes you made there, even moving from the instrumental orchestral anthem to the song anthem, these are quite radical changes. What was behind all of that? What was the sort of ethos or the vision that was driving that, other than you want to make a mark?
Well, let me explain something, because I said that I was coming from CBC to River Road. As it turned out, I was acting as program manager of CBC for, I don't know, a few months, not very long. I succeeded. What's her name? Jamaican woman, Jean Lewis. Jean Lewis's program manager at the time. They fired her, and I was asked to hold on. Vic Fernandes was deputy general manager of CBC at the time, and that asked me. And because of that, I started to study what my competitors were doing. And one of my competitors, obviously, would have been Voice of Barbados. And I had some ideas as to how I might transform CBC radio. But those ideas didn't find favor with CBC. And so when I got this offer from the Nation, who were now the new owners of Rediffusion, that offer came from Harold Hoyt in the car park of CBC one afternoon, who said, "Look, we've had, since we've taken over, we've had a couple of meetings of the board, and everybody's suggesting that maybe you should come and run Voice of Barbados." So I arrived at Voice of Barbados with a number of ideas in my head. One of them was to introduce no holds barred call-in programs. I had suggested it for CBC at lunchtime leading into the World at One, and I was told, you must be crazy. You want us to lose our jobs? So the first thing I did was to introduce Tell It Like It Is at 6:30 on Voice of Barbados. And I hosted, and then David Ellis would take over. And eventually I convinced Alombe Motley to leave CBC. Well, in essence, he just wrapped up running Crop Over.
Yeah.
And I said to him, look, you really need to come to Voice of Barbados. You'd have a free hand here, and let's put in a lunchtime program, much as the idea that I had put on the table for CBC. So that's where Brass Tacks was born. So Alombe came, and Alombe came with his original Bajan naming of programs, etc., which I liked very much. So Brass Tacks was started there.
So do you feel as though before then radio was only speaking to a certain segment of society, and it needed to change?
That's a very interesting question. I think where the change was required was in the area of the national debate, because Rediffusion had one call-in program, and it was hosted by Frank Pardo, who was the program director. And I recognized very early that program really was not a full-on national debate, because it had certain restrictions. Certain people could appear, and if you started to make a particular comment, you'd get wrapped up and things like that. And Alombe can tell you similar situations in the CBC situation where he was given a list of people who should not appear on the program. And trying to remember the program that we did in the evenings on CBC, which really was in for dig for somebody like Alombe, who was really determined to expand the national debate and to challenge people and to give thought free rein, etc.
Yeah.
So I think that what I certainly recognized, and I think where the idea of creating the national debate program before the news was that CBC had the number one news show, which is The World at One with Ricardo Blackman. There was no, people would stop whatever they're doing to be there for The World at One. So I thought, great, if we could just have a leading program to that, we would capture and hold an audience over time. And that's what's happened with Gutter Per.
Wow. This is tremendous history here, Julian.
Yeah, indeed. But one question someone asked earlier was your take on the state of Caribbean media at the moment.
Ooh,
that's a big one. Alistair, you might want to jump in on that one too.
I'll let Alison go first.
I don't know if you want me to start.
Alistair really happy the camera off now.
I don't know if you want me to start. This is Julian's day.
It's amazing. Alison and I talk about these things all the time, okay?
Yeah.
We are concerned about the standard of media in the region. One, we think that, it is not enough just to look back and say we had great announcers and great journalists and whatever else. We do have some great people around still.
Yes.
But I think our main concern is that there are younger people who are entering the profession without the kind of grounding that's required to meet the kind of standards that we expect. And the public talk about it all the time. I have a youngster who just started on the radio here in Jamaica on one of our stations. And I heard him one morning start his show. He inherited the biggest audience in Jamaica from our morning man. And then he came afterwards and the show just dropped. Why? Because all he did was go to his theme, his intro and his theme ran on and on and on and on, like he was waiting for the news, and it didn't come out of the newsroom in time. So I explained to him, look, if you inherit a huge audience, you have to hold that audience. Don't let it drop. So you just come in. Your theme opens up, and you get in there and you communicate with the audience. Tell them, hey, thanks for the guy who just finished, and I'm here to carry on. I've got some great stuff for you, including this music. And hit the tune. What he did the other morning was he started playing, and when he did get to the tune, he played Many Rivers to Cross by Tishan Chin. And he taught over what has got to be the richest intro to that song outside of hearing it by Jimmy Cliff. And I said to him, you spoiled the whole thing for the listener, because all the listener wanted to hear was this music. If they intended for you to be talking on top of this tune, they would have done that in the studio when you would have been there with the studio with Tishan Chin. Now, there are certain techniques that I think we need to teach people, whether they're radio announcers, journalists, people in the field, etc. The people who feel, for instance, that they can go and do a live remote without the kind of research, background, knowledge, understanding, appreciation, all those things, they just go cold. I said, forget it. There's a journalist in Trinidad now who's very good now today, but he thought that breaking news out on the street was that you went straight to a fire and you arrive and you say, I'm here, I'm Julian Rogers, the fire is burning, blah, 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 blah. So I stopped him, said, please, if you want to do a live report, let's get it on tape, because you sound like you're out, you don't know what's happening. First of all, you go to a fire, you find out who place burning down, who it owned, who was affected, who was the chief fire officer, etc. Are there witnesses around, etc.? And you gather information and then you share it. You don't just arrive and start talking.
Desperate to go alive.
Yeah, you're just desperate to go alive. It doesn't work like that. So the guys, you see, the problem is they see these guys in the United States and wherever else doing these live reports. They don't know what happens before they go on the air.
And the army of people before they
That's right.
behind the scenes as well.
Yeah. Even if they're alone, you see them with a little notebook in their hands.
Yeah,
because
and the in-ears
they took notes to particular things and then they speak.
Yes.
So don't let us get up on the standard of journalism in the Caribbean because we could spend a couple of hours on that one alone. And the audience will tell you even more about it than we could.
Yes.
Well, look, we want to talk about those Trinidad years, but before we do that, you want to run the other one, Dre?
Yeah, sure. As I said, we decided to bring a lot of people in to have a conversation, and some people.
How long is this show going to be?
No, not a lot. We decided to bring a lot, but not everybody agreed. But some people wanted to send a video, and you mentioned this name earlier. Listen to this.
Given my 40 years in media, I ought to have met Julian Rogers a lot longer before I actually did, which is back in 1991 with the formation of Prime Radio, leading into the establishment of TV6, where I functioned as head of news and current affairs, and Julian basically ran the show as program director, program manager. What an encounter, what an experience. It was very difficult to come to terms with the fact that Julian's fantastic sense of humor, the raucous laughter, which I'm sure people on Independence Square could hear from the second floor of the Express building at the time. And we had a fantastic time. In no time at all, we were up in the ratings. We were very popular, not only for news and current affairs, but for general programming, both on the radio side and on the TV side. Then that era ended. Eventually, Julian, of course, was chased out of town by the political administration of the day. I went my way, and then I did further work in the region where no matter where you went, the name Julian Rogers was a well-known name and a well-respected name. Many years later, we were to reunite professionally when he came to Guardian Media Limited, where I functioned as a freelance journalist and columnist. And there again, Julian's professionalism, his commitment, and his ability to sort issues and problems and to analyze and to bring fresh perspectives was very much in evidence. Since then, again, we have moved along. Julian is now based in Jamaica, where almost as if fate has left Julian Rogers to me and others who have followed him around the region We now serve on the board of the Media Institute of the Caribbean jointly. So no, I have not been able to get Julian Rogers out of my life, and I do not wish to, but I continue to respect him highly for his professionalism, and even more than that, for his commitment to the region. That's one point upon which no one can contest Julian on, which is his undying and devotion and commitment to the Caribbean region. So I want to wish Julian all the best for the future and to thank him very much for what he has brought to Caribbean media and what he has brought to me professionally as a colleague and dear friend.
Chased out of Trinidad.
You can tell us about that.
I was gonna say that was such a good segue because even you mentioned that you moved around quite a bit. Some by choice, I'm sure. Others you were helped along.
Some by choice, some by choice. Choice versus chase.
Exactly. So you were helped along. What's the most interesting one of those scenarios that you've experienced in your time, Julian?
I don't know that. Oh Lord, I'm glad. Well, okay, let's let me deal with the Trinidad one because it is always. I don't think that it is fairly characterized, but I benefited from that characterization anyhow. So sometimes I worry about it, and other times I don't. The reality was that in Trinidad, as Wesley said, I went in there as the general manager of Prime Radio and head of the newsroom operation, etc. When we sold the radio station in 1995, I went off, to San Fernando to cool my heels and so on. And I got a call from Bernard Panton, who was head of television at the time, and says, that television show that you designed, would you come and set it up? And I said, what's happening? What was happening? I said, it seemed like a rush. He says, well, there are going to be general elections soon in Trinidad, and we want to have a morning show on television that would keep track of the elections. And that was where Morning Edition was born. I had been hosting the Breakfast Club on radio, on Prime Radio before that, a show that originally originated out of the Trinidad Hilton Live with somebody that I interviewed recently out of Tobago. And so Morning Edition then came on the air. That would have been, I think, September or November, possibly November. I'm trying to remember now. Anyhow, of 1995. And I hosted that show. And the difference of Morning Edition was that it was a news show. It wasn't patterned after these American lifestyle shows that you see in the mornings where, you do recipes and all kinds of different things, etc. So that we had a very serious show, and the election was a great foundation to build it on because it gave us an opportunity to talk to the main parties and the smaller parties and the fringe parties and whatever else. And I remember that it was the election in which we were able to bring together Basil Pandey and A&R Robinson for the very first time to sit down together since 1988. And after the show was over, I invited both of them to have breakfast downstairs in our canteen. And we are credited with creating the foundation for what eventually turned out to be a coalition of political interests between Basil Pandey and A&R Robinson, because the tie then resulted in the fact that that PNM lost the election, so to speak, and Basil and his UNC won. And the two seats that A&R Robinson's party had joined with the UNC gave them the majority, very slim majority, but that was it. The Morning Edition then was a success in terms of the political coverage. After that election and so on, I know our competitors at TDT were saying, well, you see, when the election's over and so on, they have nothing to talk about. Well, they were very wrong. We decided that we needed to provide a voice for and listen to many other areas of activity in Trinidad, particularly the NGO community. But I think the greatest credit we have to give is to the University of the West Indies at St. Augustine, because one phone call resulted in us getting access to all of their experts on every subject under the sun. Also to the Creative Arts Center, a chap who was a lifelong friend, Gibbons, who was head of that. I said to him, for instance, that we got this issue in Trinidad with spousal abuse and so on. Would you come and act out spousal abuse scenarios for us on the air, on the morning show, and have your characters respond in character to the calls and questions from the audience? For me, it was like the best thing I ever did in television.
Wow.
It's huge.
So anyhow, quick forward now is that I think that what happened was that Basdio Pandey and his people were very happy when we provided them a platform while they're in opposition. But when they got in the government, they thought differently about us. And there's a little more history in terms of his he was very upset and held a grudge against Ken Gordon, who was our chairman. And Ken Gordon had served in the Robinson administration for 2 years as the Minister of Industry and Commerce. It said he would come into the government for 2 years. He did that, etc. And I think in that falling out between Basdio Pandey and A&R Robinson, he had this grudge against Ken Gordon. And I think that what happened was that I was a target, somebody you could go after to damage Ken Gordon's successes with television and radio, etc. But I learned a lot of that afterwards.
All right.
And I remember being the last day on the air. My guests were Peter Minchell and David Rudder and the Caribbean man. Stalin. Stalin was in Barbados when I called the evening before to ask if he'd be on the show, because I wanted the final show. I'd worked out in my mind this was going to be the last show, that I wanted to push this whole matter of Caribbean unity. And so Stalin was in Barbados, came in, called me about 3 o'clock in the morning, says, because he's all the way down in Point 14, he says, I got your message. I will be on the show, but you have to bring me in by phone. David Rudder came to the studio. Peter Minchell came to the studio. And we talked about the importance of this Caribbean nation, etc. The show ended at 8 o'clock. As I wrapped up, I said, I explained that 3 attempts have been made to renew my work permit, etc. And none of them had succeeded. I also said that I'd gone to see the chief immigration officer in Trinidad and asked him if I stood in danger of being expelled from the country, as the case may be. And he said, Mr. Rogers, I don't know what this is all about. But as far as we are concerned, you are here on you have 3 strengths. 1, you're a graduate of the University of the West Indies. 2, we don't see anybody replacing you unless we're asking somebody to replace Sparrow. And we don't see you being a burden on the state. So we wouldn't come after you. We have no reason whatsoever. But I was determined. And on the last day of the show, I said, if Mr. Pandey really believes in Caribbean unity, he'd renew my work permit. And if I don't get word on that today, I'm going to leave Trinidad today. And I was on the 4 o'clock flight out of there. But before I left, there was a demonstration in Port of Spain that morning, led by a lady who came outside the building and urged that I should stay. Next thing you know, there was a crowd of people that assembled outside. The mayor of Port of Spain came with his councillors and presented me with a plaque for my dedication to the media of Trinidad and Tobago. And then the crowd urged me to come out and join them. Now, I had said in my closing that one of the joys of being in Trinidad was to be able to walk down Independence Square and also walk through the connecting malls from Frederick Street to Shannon, et cetera, et cetera. That was one of my clear head things. And they said, Mr. Rogers, down the promenade. So I came outside and there were school children, big people, whatever the case may be, in this crowd that assembled. And I was going down, and I felt a tap on my shoulder, and the voice said, "Don't look back, but I'm a police officer. I'm here to protect you. I heard what you said on the radio, and I want to be sure that you're good and safe."
Wow.
And they carried me all the way down, shouting, "Rogers stays, Pandey goes. Rogers stays, Pandey goes."
Oh my word!
And they went all the way down to the Twin Towers where the Prime Minister's office was at the time. And we got down there, and my engineering team came up the other side of Independence Square and grabbed me literally like a bag of potatoes and threw me into the car and took me back to the station and said, "That's enough, Rogers." And the rain came down so hard. The time it went. So I went home to my girlfriend and partner at the time, Ometi Leiter. We just had a young child, and I went out. We went out to the airport, and at the airport, Ometi Leiter, for the rest of you who don't know, is an Indo-Trinidadian, and it was like Indian families going away to the UK or the States, as the case may be. Everybody turn up. Well, the airport was full of Indian fans, Indo-Trinidadian fans, who said, "Don't worry, Ometi, we can look after you. Go ahead, Mr. Rogers. Go ahead, Mr. Rogers." And that was one very tearful and sad departure from Trinidad. But so I'm not sure that we can blame Mr. Pandey. That's that. I said all of that to say that maybe there's some other thing in there. Somebody even suggested that somebody in the work permit committee at the time just didn't like me and what I was doing on the radio, etc. But
Somebody
it wasn't like I was out there making political statements and whatever else. You guys have known me for all these years. I've not been about giving my opinion about the state of the countries, etc. I've always held to the role of the journalist as a reporter, and most importantly, as a moderator of the national debate. So I don't know that it can hold anything like that against me.
No, that's tremendous, Julian. And I think it was important for our audience to hear that as well. Well, look, we're going to try to bring this home. But before we do, there are a couple of things we want to do. And one of them is to really recognize the achievements. You know, you talk about some of them here this evening. But from Barbados, Antigua, Trinidad, where you are in Jamaica now, Anguilla, Belize, Guyana, you are truly a Caribbean man who has had some significant achievements. And I thought we'll just put this here for people to see the breadth of experience and achievements of Julian Rogers, the Caribbean man.
Indeed.
Wow. Woo.
You forgot about some of those, Julian?
Oh, Lord mercy. All right. So quickly, 64, 69. Yeah. Heinz Hotline, definitely. Montserrat, yes.
Yes.
ZDK. Tremendous. And that's another great radio station, by the way.
Yep.
The 76, 77. Yeah, the Correspondent Network. Voice of Barbados, great time. CCN TV. Yeah. Wake Up Caribbean. That's another great story. But anyhow.
Yeah.
a lot of
Win FM in St. Kitts, where the private sector said they wanted a radio station, and the government of the day had said they'd give them a license, but I went there as a consultant, and they took forever and ever to give the license. I said, guys, I can't stay anymore and take your money. So I ended up going back to Antigua to help set up what is today Observer Radio. Yeah.
Well, we just wanted to make sure that
what did they miss? Oh, you're looking at the list.
We missed something?
In that garden.
It is always the danger with someone like yourself when you try to list it out.
Yeah.
You miss something.
You did miss something very significant.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
The Antigua Barbuda establishing the Observer Radio was 2001, not 2012. I went back
Yes.
Okay.
in 2012,
Oh,
and it's 2009 when I went back
Mark Rogers proofread
to
you.
Observer.
Who's
So
Rogers proofread us.
I got a proofreader, yes.
so you
Proofread our copy.
Yes, yeah. Gotta get the copy right, boy.
He proofread our copy here.
Yeah,
like,
Observer
Get it?
again. I mean, that's a great story to talk about Observer Radio.
Sure.
With I went to help Winston Derrick and Fergie Derrick set up Observer Radio. Again, it was if you meet somebody with ideas and passion, it was certainly Winston Derrick. Here was somebody who was fighting really against the environment of Antigua, which at that point, again, we come back to the matter of the national debate, because you had ABS Radio, which was government owned, obviously. You had ZDK, which was not government owned, but the Byrd family owned that station. And they were linked with the Antigua Labour Party, the ruling party at various stages, long periods, etc. So there was an avenue for a balance, so to speak, within the national debate. And Winston Derrick and Fergie Derrick had started a newspaper years before called The Observer. And it was literally something that they ran off a risograph, etc., and they faxed out and so on. Eventually became a newspaper, as it was then. But they also felt that they needed to start a radio station. And Winston Derrick, being the technical guy, got together and got some equipment, etc., and started the broadcast. And the government stepped in and said, "Hey, you can't do that. You need a license." And they sent the police to his home, and they grabbed up all the equipment, etc., and impounded it. So you don't mess with Winston Derrick or Fergie Derrick. They will take you to the highest court in the land, and they did. They went all the way to the Privy Council, challenging the government of the day, and the Privy Council ruled in their favor, which is a landmark decision for the entire Caribbean, by the way. So that no government can really deny granting you a license without very good, clear grounds to do so. So as I said to you, I was in St. Kitts towards the end of 2000, where this project was going nowhere. And I sent a note to Winston and said, "Hey, if you need any help, let me know. I'll come over." So said, so done. So I came over, and he had already identified a building in St. John's and started to build studio, etc. And I said, "Okay, I think you need some help here." So my good friend John Silcott, who was one of the best engineers in the region out of Montserrat, I called John and I said, "John, we need to help Winston put this right." So we got all the right equipment in place and so on, automation, hardware, software, and so on. And we started then looking for talent. And there's where we did Winston knew everybody in Antigua, and everybody knew Winston anyhow. And we started to get, to identify people. So we found Denise Francis, for instance, who had worked at Sandals as an entertainment host, and she came and she joined us there. We needed somebody who could take on the nighttime, and Winston knew of a guy called Serpent, and Serpent came in, and at that point, he was a master of mixing the music with the national discussion. So here is a difference thing. I always said that he was the first person I knew that really took over nighttime radio in a way that was unrivaled in the Caribbean. So his name is Serpent, and then he decided, look, he wanted to do a Saturday afternoon, so he would do Monday to Friday nights, and he would start at 9 o'clock. He could go to midnight because he had all the energy in the world, and then he started doing Saturday afternoons, and he would do the longest show. So some Saturday mornings I would work, and between myself and Julius Giddens, by the way, who joined me on that project as the trainer, and we rotated Saturday mornings. and Serpent would come in after us at 10 o'clock and do a show until the news was ready at 5:30, a marathon session. And he had a group of pals come in, etc. So Observer turned out to be the best thing to happen to Antigua and Barbuda in terms of national debate. The high point for us really at one point was there was a commission of inquiry into the Social Security scheme in Antigua, and we did carry the coverage daily, but people look forward to Serpent's summary of the day's proceedings, etc. And that stood out between himself and the head of news at the time, whose name I'm not remembering now, out of Montserrat. They did a fantastic job, and overall, so we got a reputation for providing a platform for again, we come back to this national debate. I always say, these calling programs are the saviors of many countries in the Caribbean, because without them, they provided what I call democracy of the airwaves, a release valve. Otherwise, we'd have riots in the streets a long time.
Probably right there.
People feeling that they have access.
Absolutely. Okay.
As well. No, that's fantastic. And again, that speaks to legacy.
Yes.
And Julian, someone said that we're getting ready for part 2 next week, they said. But we always think it's so important to have these long form discussions, and don't try to go too quickly, especially when it comes to honoring our legends and as people with such outstanding careers and long careers such as yourself. And here at We Global, we've honored a few, starting with David Rudder, then Michael Holding from Jamaica.
Sorry, breaking news. Sorry, guys. I was just talking to you about ZDK.
Yeah.
So you take that down a minute and let me just finish this, because this is important.
Yeah.
So ABS Television and Radio is reporting that ZDK owner Ivor Bird hospitalized after crash this afternoon. He's taken to hospital this afternoon following a crash on Tradewinds Drive, minutes to 3. He was reportedly heading south when he lost control of his Kia Sorento SUV, collided with 3 vehicles. The SUV then reportedly slammed into a wooden utility pole, breaking it into 3 pieces. The extent of his injuries is unknown at this time. Now, I told you just briefly about this man, Ivor Bird, being the conceptual leader as far as ZDK is concerned. And I think at a time like this, it's important that I spend a little time just talking about him.
Yeah.
Ivor Bird is the son of what do you call that? National hero. Yeah, national hero, one of the national heroes of Antigua and Barbuda. Ivor Bird, we could paint him black, blue, or whatever the case may be, but we can't paint him without recognizing his ideas, his passion, etc. So I had the chance of working with him early up in the setup of ZDK. He knew exactly what he wanted in terms of a radio station, a popular radio station. So he was very happy that I would leave Radio Athletes and come there. But he also had Jody Owen, an American, one of the most beautiful people I've ever known, who lived in Antigua. He was a program director. The people who came together to form ZDK did so on the basis of Ivor's passion, interest, and so on about doing quality radio in Antigua. Let's forget about the fact that he's the premier's son, and that it is the Bird family that own the radio stations, the case may be. His is about quality and standard and whatever else. So we had another Bird in there who not related to them, Arthur Bird, who was a longtime performer, announcer on ABS radio. We had Andy Lawrence, who was a guy that begged to be on the radio. Came out of Villa in Antigua, very much into reggae music, and in fact, his whole show in the afternoons was about reggae. But ZDK also produced one of the best DJs. And I'm not talking about the kind of DJs we hear around now these days, it's case may be. A guy called Toby Gans. Toby Gans is on from 3 to 6. Ira Bird found that guy. Where did he find him? This guy had a little pirate station set up in Gray's Farm in the area where he lived. It couldn't be heard for more than 2 or 3 miles away from his house. He brought him in, and Toby Gans turned out to be the most exciting DJ I have ever come across. I mean, his impact was tremendous. If Toby Gans told you a tune was a hit, it was a hit. You didn't have to hear it; you just believed him. It was true. And therefore we again a matter of a team there working at this. But I think that the overall credit has to go to Ira Bird for picking the right people, giving us our head, etc. I mean, we would fall out later on, but that's not the point of this of my remembering him. We've forgiven each other a long time and moved on from that. But I think it's important to understand the kind of people who made a difference in radio. You talk about me making a difference, but I think it's important to understand that I was also able to work with people who had a particular determination, passion, most importantly, a concept about what their radio station should be. And Ira Bird will always be remembered, and we always remember him for his time on the air, because he did a weekend show called The Silent One. He never said a word, by the way, but everybody knew that Ira Bird was playing the music. Really fantastic. So I hope that that he gets the best of treatment. I'm sure at the Mount St. John's Medical Center, and that he'll come back and be ready to carry on his work.
No, agreed. Our prayers go out. Hope he pulls through that as well. Indeed.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that, Julian.
It's the Lester Bird Medical Center. Sorry.
Lester Bird.
Okay.
Thank you. So our wall so far: David Rudder, Trinidad and Tobago; Michael Holding from Jamaica; Alison Hines, Barbados; Jennifer Hostin from Grenada; Mighty Gabby, Barbados; Winsford Devine, Trinidad and Tobago; and Julian Rogers. We add you to our wall as well. The wall is getting crowded. We got to change the configuration. But we wanted to say thank you, Julian, for everything that you have contributed to the Caribbean journey, in terms of your vision, in terms of your innovation, in terms of your voice, in terms of your journalism as well. You've added every step of the way across the region. In the last few decades, your voice is there, your input is there, your ability to connect us is there, to the point where you're known as the Caribbean man, along with Stalin. The only 2 people I know that have that name, actually, the Caribbean man. So we wanted to say thank you, and we thought it was really important that we pay tribute to you. The region says thank you, and guys in the comments, please pile in there as well. We just thought it was important that we really, really honor you. And I think it's important for us to tell our own stories, to have you on, to share your journey as well. So, Julian Rogers, thank you so much. Guys?
Yeah, when we look across the region and we think about where we are going and where we want to go, we often have to look back on the people who are the voices of reason, the voices of integrity, the voices of the Caribbean, the people who want to make a difference. And Julian, it is a great honor to be able to say thank you so much, and thank you for being the person that you have been and the person that you continue to be as a voice in this region. Thank you.
Most definitely. Phil?
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks a lot. What struck me a lot was the time that you took to remember your roots, from your father, from Mr. Wharton, from Mr. Oxley, and so on. I think that inspires me always when people remember, where they've come from, the people who have made them, the people who have invested in them to achieve what they've achieved. So I lift I raise a glass of Moby to you. And although we're honoring you, we hope that you still have a lot of energy in you to continue pouring into what you do
Come for that.
as well.
Absolutely.
Well, let me just say that the journey hasn't ended.
I know.
No.
You know that.
Thanks to Butch Stewart, or their departed chairman. I got the call to come to Jamaica and to be the managing director of the Jamaica Observer, and to inherit a tremendous staff, and to inherit a country that really I've grown very much to love. I call myself the King of Kingston, but I've also realized that I need to be more than the King of Kingston, etc. But I think that I could never wrap this up without saying thank you to the people that I'm working with now in the Jamaica Observer, and to the other media colleagues in Jamaica who are all part of the effort to really deliver to this national community exemplary service. And I want to thank my current chairman, Adam Stewart, as well, for giving me the kind of support, he and his team, for the work that we're trying to continue at the Jamaica Observer in the finest tradition of our chairman. I think that kind of support is unrivaled, and I really look forward every day to working with this team, because they welcome me in such a way. They've taught me a great many things about Jamaica and about the job and about the work, etc. And I hope that my influence will continue to be positive in terms of their own development, and so that I can look forward to look back at some point and say, hey, we've been able to do some fantastic things in this country, not just for Jamaica, but for the Caribbean as a whole. So I want to thank you all for the salute and for the memories. You certainly have me thinking about a number of things which I thought I'd forgotten, but my memory is not as bad as I thought it was.
Very sharp.
Is very good to me, better than mine. But even to add to that, and as others pay salute as well in the comments, when we started the Global just about a year ago, a good friend of mine, June in Barbados, mentioned, "Oh, you should get Julian Rogers on." And I called Mark and Philip instantly and say, "You think he would actually come?" I think my first question was to June was, "You mean the Julian Rogers?" Because I thought she was pulling my leg. I thought she was talking about someone else. Because we hold you in such esteem. I didn't think for us, we were only like, 4 or 5 weeks in, guys? When June suggested that. And right from the bat, once I messaged and we got to talking, you said, of course. And ever since then, I can say, if we ever stuck for a topic or stuck for a guest or anyone that potentially can come on the show, one message to Julian, and within 10 minutes, I get a contact, an introduction back straight away. So I say that to say, you started with mentorship at the beginning when you first started, as Philip was saying, to the people that you pay salute to who mentored you along the way. But you yourself are still giving back, and we're recipients of that.
Absolutely.
You pouring into us and being open and giving back. So we say thank you for that on a personal level as well.
Thank you very much. Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
you. Thanks, everybody.
No.
And
You
of
wanna
course,
pull
you
it on,
still have
Brett?
Timeless Caribbean, right? You're doing that as well online. So we're gonna put details on that online as well. So someone mentioned about retirement or something like that in the chats. I don't even think you want to talk about that word. I'm not even going to ask you about that. I shouldn't even mention the comment. That's not happening anytime soon, guys.
My father used to say that if you retire and do nothing, you fossilize.
This is true. I think he's right. I 100% agree with him. But Julian, thank you so much for joining us, and to the guys in the audience, thank you. So, Mark, you asked me something just now. Sorry.
No, I was just asking if you want to bring it home. Go ahead.
Yeah. Guys in the audience, thank you so much for joining us and for being with us for the last couple of hours. And someone said we need a part 2. Julian, there's so much I think people still want to hear from you. The stories, the people you've met. There's so many aspects we could have gone in conversation talking about things you've seen throughout throughout your years in broadcasting across the region, whether it be Caribbean leadership, CARICOM, what's not. So many areas that we could have gone in. But I think even before we close, I'm going to let you have the last word. As the Caribbean man, where do you see us as a Caribbean going, and what do you want to see? And I leave you with that final word.
Well, first of all, I like to see us get past this pandemic. That's the first thing, and I think that the only way we're going to get past this is to put an end to the hesitancy in terms of making a decision about taking the vaccine. I mean, that's the first thing. Those who don't take the or won't take the vaccine for valid reasons, I can side with you, but I think that the history of vaccines in the Caribbean is quite clear, and I don't know that you make a choice between death and not taking the vaccine. I think we've come to that point. I think as well that the narrative about mandatory vaccination, etc., is misplaced, because I haven't heard anybody say so across this Caribbean. The closest is to Antigua, where the Prime Minister said, "Look, you guys need to take the vaccine, etc., etc." But he's got his own situation and his own thing to deal with there. But I think that the reality is, I don't think we can get away with not taking the opportunity of reducing the incidence of death and pain and anguish in our Caribbean communities without responding to the medical opportunities that are available to us. That's the first thing. Generally, I also would like to see a deepening of the relationship around the Caribbean. I think there are a lot of opportunities, particularly now that everything is virtual, for a lot more connections among Caribbean people. I'd like to think that people in particular areas, the fashion industry, for instance, is doing it from time to time. They now have virtual fashion shows and so on, and they're making connections. I think if we take every sector of our national, regional lives and make connections, we would then be acting as one. This particularly has come up in how we respond to the COVID pandemic, in that we have one set of activity in one country and another set in another country, etc. And people keep asking, why don't we have a CARICOM position? So if the people are asking for that, I think that we need to find a way in which to do a lot more of that. Some of it is happening, but definitely not enough to convince the mass of people that this is the right way to go.
Yeah.
We have to get past this, and I think we can, but it takes a common purpose, a common understanding of the purpose, to be able to deal with it. Once we can fix that, I think we can fix a lot of other things. Look at our educational sector. There clearly is a requirement for a whole rethink, revamp, etc. And we need to find more avenues for the young people whose whole focus now must change from whatever they expected to be able to do, etc. We have a lot of work on our hands, but healthy people will be required to do so. And I think we need to get healthy first.
Yeah, 100%. Thank
Absolutely.
you for that, Julian.
Yeah.
Look, guys in the audience, usually, when we have guests in, they go and then we wrap up and then we close the show. But when we have our legends in, we never ask our legends to leave the living room. We all go out together. So everyone in the audience, thank you so much. Ivan in Suriname, Alison Leacott, thank you so much. Wesley Gibbons, thank you so much for sharing it via video as well. And for everyone who've been in the comments, just thanking Julian for all that he's doing and he continues to do across the region. Thank you very much for staying with us. Guys, until next time, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. That was good.